a very good afternoon to everybody. I was just having a quick word with Dr. Ashok Chauhan while we were having lunch. And what I was trying to tell him is his energy levels were extremely high. And I can see that energy level sort of reflecting in the university's spirit. And I've had a very slow start to my day, and listening to him speak has sort of lifted my own spirits as well. So I just want to do a small exercise before I get into my own presentation. I wanted to know how many of you out here is seriously considering education in Europe. And when I say Europe, I want to leave out UK. So how many of you out here is looking to migrate to Europe for an education? If you could all stand up for a second. Don't be shy if you're really thinking of moving. I also, just as remain standing, I also want to know how many of you would reconsider, if you've decided to go elsewhere, how many of you would reconsider moving to Europe if you think there's more information available to you on the various programs, universities, and scholarships out there in Europe? Is that all? I'm quite surprised. Thank you. So there's been a lot of discussion about global education. And while I was sitting out there early in the morning, I was just thinking to myself, our very own country has had a huge role to play when it comes to global education. Any guesses on what is the role that we played in global education? We were one of the few countries back in the ages which ran universities called Takshila and Nalanda, which used to receive students from all across the globe. So if you happen to read the history of these universities, you will be very surprised to see that there were a lot of people moving from as far as Europe, from royal families to study at the Takshila University. So I've been very proud of the fact that we had a huge role to play, and as a country we had seen value in a global education several centuries earlier. Another thing, a disclaimer here, my presentation is probably not well structured. You might see in the slides to follow that I'm not a big fan of PPTs. But a little bit of myself, I run two companies which are based out of New Delhi. When I returned back to India in 2010, my partner and also my senior from my course at Aalto University, he has started a digital marketing firm, and I joined him as a partner. The thing about entrepreneurship is I'm a first generation entrepreneur. I come from a middle class family. Many of my relatives as well as my own parents didn't believe that people from middle class families are capable of doing business. And I've grown up thinking that probably what my parents said were true until I went abroad to study. And I wanted to emphasize on the fact that when Mr. Pradeep in the morning was saying that education sort of opens up your mind to say why not, it was the exact same words I told my parents when I decided to pursue a career as an entrepreneur. I attended the Norwegian University of Technology and Science as well as the Aalto University. In the morning when I saw one of the slides that your university ran me through, I was very surprised to see Amity University is already collaborating with the Aalto University in Finland. It was a 2-year program. I spent 1 year at the Norwegian University, and I spent the following year at the Aalto University. I'm also an alumnus of BITS Pilani. One of the biggest takeaways for me from my time in Europe is how technology, business, and design sort of came together when it came to solving big problems that existed there. And my very own university, Aalto University, is a great example of, and the idea that the university had was all the problems that the society faces today are quite large for people from one particular domain to come and solve. And they strongly believe in collaboration between people of various skills to come together. This is nothing new apart from what has been shared earlier. But then a few things I really loved about studying in Europe was the open culture. For example, I could address my professors using their first name. They were easily approachable. I could walk up to them at any point in time, ask them any question that I had. And nobody sort of judges you in an environment like that. And I guess when I look at the Indian education education system. I think there are a lot of good practices out there which the Indian education system can also sort of embrace. I also loved the kind of cutting-edge research that happens. Predominantly, I can speak on behalf of Scandinavia, where I spent most of my life. But then it was not just all the education that was sort of dominating my time there. We had flexibility in our university to move between programs. We had great level of flexibility in terms of choosing the kind of courses that we wanted to do. Being somebody, I did my undergrad in computer science, and predominantly most of my knowledge happens to be in the IT domain. But I sort of had an inclination towards design. And since the university had the provision for me to sort of take up courses in design as well, I spent the summer in 2009 attending courses in design. And today, I was speaking to a few people in the morning as well with Lynn about the importance of liberal studies, which is sort of picking up in our country. And whenever I listen to, for example, there was this very popular talk from Steve Jobs, where he speaks about his life and all the university and courses that he attended. And every time I listen to that talk, and I make it a practice to listen to the talk once a year, and every time I listen to that talk, something just keeps hitting me. It's the way his education has been structured, where he has sort of put himself through various academic paths. And the outcome of it, I don't know whether he really graduated with a degree in any of it, but it has exposed him to a lot of concepts which otherwise he wouldn't have been. And the European universities, of course, do offer scholarships, which is one of the promising reasons for any Indian student to look at them. But these scholarships are not just referring to universities. There are plenty of organizations which offer scholarships in Europe. The interesting thing about these scholarships, however, is they don't just look at financial support, but also they give you a program where they put you through induction, they take you through internships, right to the point where they employ you once you graduate. So, in my opinion, coming from a country like India where competition is extremely stiff, when you have such opportunities being thrown at you, I see no reason why you wouldn't want to pounce on it. A little bit about, again, the opportunities there. What usually happens in all the universities is what we have a day called a career day, where all the companies come and interact with students, much like what happens here. However, the idea behind the career days is students get an opportunity to understand not just the job opportunities which are available, but also the culture of various organizations which are there. And based on this, they decide what is the organization that they want to sort of associate with the moment they graduate. The importance of, I don't want to keep emphasizing again and again on the importance of language and understanding cultures, but some of the thing about Europe is if you want to have a fair chance at competing at the local level, I would strongly advise any student looking to migrate there temporarily or for a 2-year program to look at language as one of the base requirements. You could opt for courses here in India as well to take up a couple of language courses if you go, or depending on the country you migrate to, I would strongly advise you to pick up on language. So it is not always about just studies out there when I studied. I guess this was a picture taken a couple of years back at the university. There are a couple of days where students from the university dress up in medieval clothing and they stage duels. And this whole event happens for a few days. People drink a lot of beer during those time. And one thing that was very interesting about this is the importance of balancing your work, your career, and your education as a student, right? And I saw that somehow there was this remarkable ability in people in Europe to sort of balance this and give equal weightage to all aspects of life. Traveling, of course. I don't think there's one single Erasmus Mundus student who hasn't traveled during his time in Europe. The thing is, you get a Schengen visa and all doors to every single country within Europe are pretty much open for travel. The thing about travel is, as a student, you're limited by the money that you have. So we usually used to travel on tight budgets, backpacks, and we used to stay in shoddy hostels. But the interesting thing about traveling is you discover a little bit about yourself every time you travel, right? And there's this one individual from, I think, the US or the UK, I'm not able to recollect. His name is Pico Iyer. And Pico Iyer says there is a difference between a person who is a traveler and a person who is a tourist. And my time during my education in Europe, I wanted to be a traveler, and I spent a lot of my time traveling through various countries. What happens when you really travel is you're put in a new country where you don't speak the language, you don't know the country so well, and your survival instinct sort of kicks in. And the next thing you know, your planning abilities just grow. Okay, let's come to some of the promising companies which are emerging out of Europe. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are able to recognize the bird on the top left corner. You there? Do you know the company which is behind the game, Angry Birds?
Rovio.
Yes. And any guess on which country Rovio comes from?
Finland.
Yeah, Finland. So what business do you think Rovio is into? Should be a very straightforward answer, and I guess everybody would want to say gaming. But the strange thing is, if you've read the news recently, Rovio is trying to make a foray into China and India. And in India, their business is not selling games. Their focus is on building parks. So they want to build Rovio parks all across India. And they're partnering with companies here. In China, they're looking at games as a means to provide English education. So now it makes you think, once again, what is the business that any company is into? The next company is again Supercell. Supercell is also based out of Helsinki. One of the companies which has recently received, I think, over €1 billion in funding from SoftBank in Japan. Very good examples of how a very small country with just 5.5 million people could innovate so rapidly and put themselves on the map. Now, the examples are just numerous. Skype, which happened to be mentioned earlier in the morning, IKEA, Lego, Nokia, probably not a good example at this moment, but at least they got acquired by Microsoft. So the examples are way too many about companies which are rapidly innovating back in Europe. There was also a very interesting thing I wanted to share, which was, there was a thing about which is the biggest camera manufacturer in the world. And this sort of question came up as a debate in one of our lecture rooms. And everybody was trying to judge between whether it's Canon or Nikon, which is sort of ruling the space there. And surprisingly, our faculty member said it's Nokia. So Nokia, through their mobile phones and embedded cameras, was the biggest seller of camera phones. So it makes you think once again, which business is any company into? One that you might assume on the surface, and one at a much deeper level where the company is trying to diversify into various areas. Today, the lines that differentiate various companies have sort of blurred, and very often we see companies in completely contrasting domains staring at the face of each other. And there was also this very funny example from India saying that the Bollywood industry was taking a deep hit the moment IPL came about. The reason being, the IPL was competing for the same 3-hour slot that movies used to play in India. So the Bollywood industry had a lot of complaints against the IPL, saying that maybe we should talk to each other and make sure we don't cross lines. So another aspect of companies is there was a time when India was always looked on as an outsourcing kind of destination. And now I've been spending a couple of weeks in Helsinki and Copenhagen over the last month, and I've been interacting with a lot of entrepreneurs there. And one thing that was very evident from my discussions with them was many companies are now not interested in an outsourcing model. Every company I spoke to wants to call themselves as an offshoring model, where they're saying we want to build partnerships with companies in Asian parts of the world, and we want to collaborate with them. And every company out there strongly believes the market for them is going to be from India and China. I happened to meet an entrepreneur from Helsinki who runs a chain of dental clinics called Mega Clinica. And surprisingly, he's run out of clients all across Scandinavia. He says he doesn't have one more patient in Finland that he can cater to, and he's looking towards the east for more patients. So you can imagine that what has played in their advantage in terms of having amazing infrastructure, very organized governance, is also their biggest limitation when it comes to not having ample amount of people who they can call as a market. So many of these European companies are looking towards India and China as their biggest markets in the years to come. During the peak years or the jubilant years of Nokia, Nokia had a team which studied Indian culture, and their primary role was to come visit India, understand the Indian culture, the way we do business, and they had to go back and educate their own staff on how to deal with India. So you can imagine in times to come how an education in Europe plus your ethnicity, which is Indian, could really play to your advantage when it comes to serving companies which are looking to globally expand into the Asian markets. Entrepreneurship. Honestly speaking, until 2009, I didn't know an A or B or C or D of entrepreneurship. I was inspired by some friends of mine who came from Bangalore, and needless to say, the vibrant IT culture there sort of had inspired them. I spent about a year attending a lot of pitches and sessions by other entrepreneurs, and it was very clear to me that when I came back to India, I would want to start. But then starting is not as easy as it seems to me today. Unless and until I had the right team to sort of back me up and believe in me, I don't think an entrepreneurial dream could be realized. So I think if at all I have to attribute my gratitude to anybody or any institution, I would say I owe it to a lot of the people I met during my time in Europe, as well as to the university which runs the Auto Entrepreneurship Society. Now I would definitely encourage a lot of the students who have an entrepreneurial mindset to check out Auto Entrepreneurship Society, because they do fund promising startups that come from the rest of the world. So one of the examples that at least I want to share today is the Auto on Tracks that you see in the image on the right bottom. It was a student-run initiative which was completely supported by the university, where the students decided that they wanted to attend a fair which was happening in China, and they didn't want to fly down to China. They decided that they would take a train all the way from Helsinki into China. So they spoke to railway authorities. They organized a trans-Siberian railway journey. They booked a chartered train, filled it up with Auto students, and they traveled all the way from Helsinki to China to attend a trade fair. And this initiative might seem very easy on the surface, but the nitty-gritties involved were just too many that none of us really went there to do it. But they did it because of the support that was rendered to them by the university and the Entrepreneur Society. Later on, because of the success of Auto on Tracks, they did Auto on Waves, where they took a ship and they traveled from Helsinki to, I guess, Portugal, to Africa, to, I think, Latin America. So this was, again, a student trip, completely filled with students, researchers, and people from the industry. So one of the things that we have done, at least something that I'm very proud of, is we have found a way to go back to the universities where we graduated from and to the European institutions. My company, MixORG, runs a digital marketing firm. It's a digital marketing firm. So we help organizations with their digital social media needs. So we work extremely closely with my alma mater, the Auto University. We are the digital partner. We help them sort of promote the university and their programs to the Asian countries, to Spain, Turkey, and Italy, and other parts of the world. So if any one of you is interested in exploring opportunities of studying or working with the university, the Auto University, I would strongly encourage you to look up for them on the Facebook page that's there. That's about it from me. I'm extremely happy to take questions from all of you in the following session. Thank you.